This is some pollo tropical leftover like water. I've had so much coffee today. I
I
need to
love it.
stop taking so much coffee.
Girl, when you were talking about coffee in the show, you're like, I'm first generation Cuban. Yes, I
Absolutely.
can't survive without it. I was cracking up because I'm like, that's the thing. Like, I was drinking coffee when I was 5 years old.
Yeah,
Con,
it's like
con
it's almost like
pancito.
religious. Like you have to have it. It's your
It's a
parents give
rite
it
of
to you. Like yeah,
passage.
yeah, vete pa allá. Get the energy, go
Right.
to school, and then like die down by the time you go home. It feels like the overall
We're like
vibe.
crashing at 6 years old in school.
Exactly. I think no. I think that's the reason why they gave it to me so I wouldn't crash because I would like fall asleep, and the doctor's like, just have un poquitico of Cuban coffee and she'll be fine. And
Oh my
I'm
God.
33 now, and I'm still alive, and I still made it, and I'm still
Yeah, we're
functioning.
here. Well, I have so many questions for you, todo el chisme. I want to first start with how I start every podcast, and that's how do you identify and why? And let me tell you,
Okay.
I've had 80 episodes now, y más, that have been recorded. No one's answered this question the same. And that just shows the beauty and Latinidad and just the diversity that we have. So I want to ask you, Eilyn, how do you identify and why?
Ooh, that's a heavy question. How do I identify? I identify as somebody who firmly believes that good always wins and that good things happen to good people. So every day that I wake up, I try to put the best foot forward. I'm far from perfect, very imperfect, but I'm imperfectly trying to be the best version of myself every single day possible. So if I would define myself, I would say I'm always self-evolving is the greatest way to explain it. I am always self-evolving, and like I mentioned before, well, why? Because yeah, I think there's so many opportunities in life, and there's so many things that we can do. But being a good person and doing things with the right intention, I think, is the first foundation in anything we ever do. So that would be my definition.
Okay, Eileen, getting deep with us. I I love starting these episodes with like your story because I think
Okay.
like everyone who's watched Designing Miami knows, I mean, you're a badass
Oh,
Latina,
thank you.
boss lady, jefa de todo, and you are just the definition of Latina excellence. But I want to go back into your story and
Okay.
I want to learn about little Eileen, little Cubanita, running around the streets of Miami. Like, paint the picture for us. Like, what was your experience like growing up in a Cuban household?
That's such an interesting question because like I look back now at things and I'm like, wow, like who would have thought that I was gonna be in the life that I have today, you know? I never thought I was gonna be where I am. I thought I was gonna be a choreographer. I thought I was gonna be an artist. I thought I was gonna be so many things that are not what I am today. But I always, one thing I do remember growing up was I had a fascination with business. I would put all my like peluches in the middle of my room, and I had like this like fake, not really fake. It was like an old school cash register that my dad had pharmacies growing up, so he had like one that was like broken, and he's like, "Hey, you want it?" And I would like with a sticker write prices on things, and I would sell things to my peluches, and I created that, and
Oh my
now I
God, I
look
love
back
that.
at that and I'm like, oh my God, look at the entrepreneur me. I'm selling to nobody, but I'm selling to someone. And seeing those things now, it's so cool. But my upbringing was, pretty much like anybody else's. I lived in my own bubble. I wanted to grow up quickly. I wanted to do things, already. I wanted to always like go out and hustle and do things and do things outside of what normal people were doing. I was always an overachiever when it came to education. It was really easy for me to learn. And I feel like there's certain staples and memories in my life that I hold dear, but I wish I could tap into like my childhood and remember things that I don't remember right now to
Mm.
like say like, wow, this is who you are. I've always been very outgoing, and it's crazy because I was homeschooled for high school. So most people are like, how is it that you're so outgoing and
Oh,
but coming from a
wow.
homeschool background? I'm like the exception. I don't know what happened. There was an error in my update because I'm super outgoing and I never had a hard time connecting with people. I loved people who were older. My friends were always older. I could sit in a table with a bunch of, grown adults and I was a kid and I could have a conversation. And I think that still applies to who I am today. But little Eileen was just trying to figure it out and trying to go with the flow, just laughing, trying to make people laugh and living life as best as she can.
Okay, there are two things. One, you are like my soul sister because yo también, like I was always around the older people. I mean, till now, like all my friends are older than me, like 2 to 3 years older than me. And so
Yeah.
I feel value in that. And it's because I grew up with viejitos, I always
Mhm.
say. And I was always in la mesa con los viejitos and
Con
they
lo
were talking
viejito.
about their chisme, la
Oh my
familia,
God,
and
I
I was over
loved
here
it.
like sipping my coffee.
Yes, I loved it. I loved all the achievement that had nothing to do with me, but I knew everybody else's stuff. And it was just fun.
Right.
It was just fun for me. I didn't have, I feel like today's generation is so different. There's like, okay, the younger crowd and the older crowd. That didn't apply to us. We didn't have cell phones when we were in a dinner table. We didn't have iPads. ¿Tú estás aburrido, mijita? Talk to the people or put your head down and go to sleep. Like coloring
¿Verdad?
books is as far as it got. So for me, it was like natural instinct just to gravitate towards people in general.
I wanna ask you more about Eilyn because you said you were always extroverted, you were
Yeah.
always like outgoing. That was actually one of my questions for you because you see in the show, I mean, that's how we know Eilyn.
Yeah.
You're very outgoing. You're very
Yeah.
like business entrepreneurial. You're very like Virgo jefa, like
Yes.
100%.
Un poquitico.
What was that always you though? Like it sounds like it was because you're saying you were extroverted when you were younger, but when was that like coming out of shell moment for you?
Hmm. See, that's the thing that I still don't, and not that I don't see myself in that aspect, but it's not something that I consciously try hard to do. I think that's just something that comes
Mm,
off across. I think the fact that I'm a Virgo, I think that, I've gone through so many things in life. I've just like most people, most Latinos were trying to figure it out. And for my whole life, I tried to figure out what it was a route that I want to go to. Um,
yeah.
I'm not a quitter. That's one thing. When se me mete algo en la cabeza and I want to do it, I want to go full force with it. But I can't say it's like, okay, I have to say it's in my DNA because I am here today and it comes naturally to me, it comes organically to me.
Mm,
It's hard to pinpoint, like, have I always been that way? I think I have. If you ask my therapist, she says it's true. If you ask my therapist, she says that I've always been in what they call survival mode, which is always trying to survive. And I'm like that in the sense of like, I want to be prepared for situations. So like when a
mm,
situation happens or something exciting happens, I automatically go to think of like, okay, how can it go wrong to save myself from that like hurt or save myself from disappointment or save myself from, because I do feel things and I feel them internally. So I've always been in this like survivor mode of doing things. And I think I've always pushed to do what I want and achieve the dreams that I wanted. I'll never forget when I was small, like I wanted to be in show choir. And my parents weren't on board. They're like, no, we just don't have the time for you to be able to do the extracurricular activities. And I did what any other Virgo will do. She signed the form, and behind my parents' back, I went and I did show choir. And I did exactly what I wanted to do without them knowing. It didn't affect them. It didn't alter them. It didn't. But I knew that if I wanted to survive to get there, I had to do what it took to be able to, fulfill the things that I wanted. And I think that being constantly in survivor mode is a bad thing as an adult, but I think it also
yeah.
led to where I am today, and it led to always knowing that I'm ready to take any challenge or any difficulty that comes along the way. And I think that's something that was also embedded in me from a very young age. I came from a very strict religious background where it was like very, formal. And in living in that bubble, I always was like, okay, what else? What like, why? I always questioned a lot of things and I wanted to know why. And I wanted to like get out of this bubble and kind of figure it out for myself. And that's exactly what I did. I figured it out for myself.
Let's talk about it because I'm over here
Yeah.
like yo también like very and it's probably just a Latino thing, right? Like growing up in a
Yeah.
very, very religious, strict household. I mean, no
Hmm.
sleepovers for me. I was not
Oh my
allowed
God,
to do
none.
anything. At 9 p.m. they were like on yeah, ¿dónde estás? Yeah, ¿dónde
Yeah.
estás? If they even let me go out. And then my brothers would be out for like toda la noche and they wouldn't say anything to them. So that was my life.
Yeah.
Pero how did you get out of that bubble? Like how did you start to realize like you're in this bubble? Y cómo saliste? Like how were you able to kind of build your own path?
I think one of the things that helped me by being homeschooled is that I graduated very early. So I graduated high school at 16 and I went straight to college. And going from like this bubble of not having friends outside of like the specific circle of friends that my parents and my family authorized and were approval of, like not having sleepovers, not being allowed to do any of these things, put me in that bubble. But when I went to college, and I mean, I'm a 16-year-old who her whole life has lived in a bubble, goes to college in another country. It's like, whoa, like it was like a culture shock. It was legit like a culture shock and seeing all these things. And that's where I learned to kind of like, okay, I mean, I had my first drink at 21. Like, who has their first drink at 21? Like, everybody's already drinking at like 17, 18, 19. But it was when I started like getting friends and getting out of that comfort zone of what I grew up my whole entire life here in Miami. I moved to Costa Rica to go to college. I went abroad, and being outside of my comfort zone and being in a whole entire different world opened that curiosity of like, okay, what else is there? What else is there out there? And I took the leap and I made decisions and I said, I'm going to do whatever it is that I want to do. Some decisions were great, some decisions were horrible, but I think they all taught me something. They all taught me something, and going at it and just jumping. It's like I said on the show, like how do you know what it feels like to drown if you don't jump in the water? Like you have to just get out of your comfort zone. And I think that's what led me to being like, okay, and being forced to be in that situation, being forced to be out of completely everything you've ever known, all your friends that you've ever known, being in a whole entire new culture, a whole entire new world, and saying, okay, what do I want, my life to be? And I think for, you probably understand the same thing coming from a background where like it's so confined. It gets to one day where you're like, okay, I'm done. I want to break the cycle. I want to see what the world is like, and you define what you want that future and that path to be. And that's ultimately what I did. Not everybody celebrated it, not everybody was on board, but I knew that it was a decision I wanted to make for myself, and here we are a gazillion years later.
I love that you said not everyone's going to be on board because
Yeah.
I always joke that Latino families are the biggest lovers and haters at the same time. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
like no one loves you
Absolutely.
as hard as a Latino family,
But
but they're
nobody
also
hates you at
like
the same time.
big haters.
Yeah, it's the truth.
But you love it, but I love them for it. I love them for it. And one thing that I talk a lot about is this like scarcity versus abundance mindset. And it's what
Hmm.
you're talking about, like viviendo en una vida where it's survival mode because you grow up with immigrant parents and you see them
Yeah,
working all the time. Like your
and the
brother's working.
struggle.
I was working when I was 13. Like it's always kind of like survival. You got to feed the family, you got to work. And then being in the place where you get to have abundance, it's almost like this first generation privilege and
Hmm.
pressure that we have of taking the world by storm. And that's one of the reasons I loved designing Miami because it showed like what I loved about it wasn't this reality show that showed the drama and the,
Yeah,
whatnot. It
the
showed
cattiness.
just Latino X. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was, girl, I mean, no shade to other reality shows, but
yeah,
sometimes the cattiness is just like, "Ugh, I don't want to watch this whole show. Like, I feel like
yeah.
my brain cells se están muriendo,
Hmm.
But when I watched Designing Miami, it was like, this is so dope because it shows the work ethic that Latinos have
Hmm.
and and just the hustle that we have innately. And I think you just represent that so well.
Thank you so much. And that means a lot because ultimately it goes to show, and I think one of the things that I wanted to be a biggest takeaway of the show was showing that you can be successful without tripping somebody else along the way. You can create abundance, you can create success, you can create happiness, you can create all of these things without having to be catty and fight. Like, don't get me wrong, situations happen and there is cattiness in the real world and there is drama and there is aspects of it. But I would say in real life, if we ask the majority of people, it's the minority. And I would say if you have that much drama going wrong, you have a problem. You're the problem. You're the problem.
Verdad.
Drama
Yeah.
does happen. But like, why are we not highlighting more that you can be successful and that you can do amazing things without having to like fight your way through it or be catty? Like that's just not the world we live in. And being able to showcase that is what I wanted, show that yeah, there are hardships, yeah, there's difficult moments, but the majority of life is great, and the majority of the hard work when you do it, it's well received. It doesn't have to come with like a backhanded compliment or somebody trying to, like steal your light. No, there's enough light for all of us to shine throughout.
I love that because, sometimes you just want a piece of the cake and people are like, nah, it's my cake. And I love that and that's actually another question I had for you was it intentional to build a team full of Latinas and immigrants and just like, you just have a badass team. And I was like, when Valentina was telling her story, I was like, oh my God, crying. It reminded me of my mom. It reminded me of people in my family. Was that intentional for you?
It just happened organically. It really just happened that way. It hasn't been like, okay, I didn't put a job post like you must be a Latina. No, it just happened that way. Because everybody that came on board, obviously there was one person, then another person came, and then another person came, and the team has grown. And since the show, the team has continued to grow, and they're still all female Latinas. I just think Latinas have a will to want to work hard, and we're committed, and we're going to do things, we're going to do them right. If not, we're not going to do them at all. And I believe in that. And I find nothing wrong with having, and don't get me wrong, I've gotten a lot of like comments like, oh, why don't you guys have more men? And why are you not, like, why is it not so diverse? Let's be honest. For the last 100 years, businesses have been run by men. And nobody questioned why offices were primarily men and minority women. So why are you coming at me now? Like I'm a small company. I don't employ 500 people. Doesn't mean I'm never going to have men. It just so happens that these have been the cards that have been dealt with. And why is it a problem? I feel it's time to be able to showcase and give the Latinos and give women the same grace that men were given. And men need to just sit down, smile, and applaud for the good job and not question
cómo le
like,
dicen a
okay, well,
nosotras?
why isn't
They say, Calladita te miras más bonita. We could say that to men.
calladita
Calladitos
más
se miran
bonita?
más bonitos. Like,
Aplaudiendo se ven más bonitos, is what we're gonna say.
right.
Aplaudiendo, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with it being a full, staff of females and that they're all empowerment. I mean, really, what it comes down to coming to this team is not about like, are you male, female? It's do you have what it takes? Do you have the commitment? Do you have the drive? Do you have the talent? Do you have what it takes to be a part of this team? Because if you're here, you're not mediocre. So if that is what you're going to bring to the table, this is not the place for you. And eventually, I'm sure there's going to be more people brought on board, and I'm more than happy to bring them men on board as well. They just have to be able to keep up.
Girl, snaps to you. I thought you were going to say Ray takes care of the male employment.
He does.
I'll
Well,
like,
he does. I will say this. I will say this. His team is primarily men. He has, no, I lie. It's primarily female too. So he has, I'll tell you, one, two, three, four, including himself, male, and one, two, three, four female. So he's balancing it out. He's 50-50.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So he's
I thought his
50-50.
team was all men. I was like, I kind of like this, like all Latino men and then all Latina women. And like,
I
y'all are just dividing
know.
and conquering.
It's just he couldn't, he couldn't. He saw that female power. He's like, I can't. I have to find it. I have to find it. No, but
Right.
he has an amazing team. He
Some,
has an amazing team.
yeah. Both of you, I think both of you are just so, just what you were saying earlier, like there's a way to succeed without stepping all over people or,
Hmm.
having to fight your way to the top. Like there's a way to bring people and community together. I want to hear about your first
Hmm.
hire. Like, what was that? You come from a small business, and as a small business owner, like, I'm just inspired by what you've been able to build. How was that moment from like small business to now
Oh
I'm
my God.
hiring like 5, 10 people?
I mean, I remember when it was the first one, I was scared shitless. I was like, oh my God, it's another mouth I gotta feed. Like, oh, like this is at the time where I was working out of my loft, still working at home. And it was nerve-wracking. It was nerve-wracking. But I go back to, and maybe this is just the demeanor of how I am. I don't I don't see things like, okay, well, no, I can't do that because there's this problem. I say, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. And that's what I've always done. And I think when I brought the first team on board and team member on board, and we were able to produce and create something more, and I saw that handing off task also to people who do things better than you. Because let's be honest, yes, I've created this, but everybody who's a part of the team contributes to something that they're better at or that they're good at. And that collectively as a whole, when you put all of us and our little grains of salt together, we have this amazing, fempire, like we like to call it. So when I brought the first person, it was like, okay, oh wow, this is really cool. This is great. Like, wow, we're able to create this. And I was like, all right, I think we're ready to bring one more person on board. And that's how it progressively has gone. And the growth has been there. I think believing in myself, believing in the team, believing in the capabilities, and having a strong sense of process. I say our success is the fact that we have a process in place of how we do things, and continuing that process and perfecting that process is what allows us to go and grow as much as we have. But of course, at the beginning, I was scared. Of course, I was terrified. Of course, I wasn't sure, from hiring my first person to going from working from home to opening my own studio to now having a studio and a team of eight and continue growing and doing multi-million-dollar projects and buildings from the ground up. I think it's that idea and that mentality of survivor mode that I will always do what it takes to make sure that the decisions I make are followed not only with deep thought, but also followed with hard work in order for me to be able to continue to grow. So with every person that I've brought on board, our projects are larger, we've expanded more capabilities, our knowledge. I think again, following a process and having that process in place, it's what's led it to be such a success to the point where I'm able to bring more people and the team just continue growing and growing.
I, I have so much admiration for you, and
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
just
I
curious, how do you
appreciate that.
balance it all? Like, how do you balance like being a boss and being a business owner and being a wife and dealing with your family, asking about los niños. Like, how do you deal with all of the things in your life and how do you balance it all?
I mean, I think I have no idea. I really don't. There's not like a set, no, I swear, I'm not gonna be like, oh yeah, I wake up every day at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't. I see things as I am prepared, I'm due diligent, I'm very like schedule. I write a lot of things down. I process, I think my brain has like 47 tabs open at the same time. And I think always being in that constant movement is what allows me to do so many things at the same time. But I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out what the right approach is. I've learned to, there's times where I need to focus more on work, and there's times where I need to focus more on my personal life, and there's times where I need to take a break from all of that. I really go with whatever my body, my soul, and my, you know inside when you're frying yourself, you know when you're doing, you just gotta go with what your gut says. Work really hard and figure it out along the way. And it's okay if you don't have a specific like route. Like, okay, this is what I do on Monday. I wake up and I do this on Tuesday. I do have a sense of routine in many ways, but my routines are also with constantly thinking of how to do things better and how to also enjoy life at the same time.
Can I just say I'm glad you're not that like wake up at 4 a.m. and
No,
do this and have coffee
no,
by 5 and work out by
no,
6. And
no,
I mean, you hear all those stories, but I love the honesty of like
no, that's
everyone's
not me.
wired very differently. Like
No.
everyone's wired differently, and
I
what
mean, I'm a
works for
night
one person may
owl.
not work.
I'm a night owl.
Yeah.
So my greatest thoughts sometimes come out. Like last night, I was like, in the urge to want to work. And I worked till 2 o'clock in the morning because I wanted to, and because that's what I felt. And at that moment, I had so much going on, and I took advantage of that fire that I had to be able to go and work and do what I needed to. But I'm also that person who wake up at 6:45, sit in bed, have coffee with my husband. I'm not like, I like enjoying my life. I like enjoying what I'm doing and creating things that are amazing and enjoying it with great people. And I think living a stressful life, and don't get me wrong, for people who need to have that rigid, schedule because that is what works for them, I admire it, I applaud it, but that just doesn't work for me. What works for me is, doing it in the way where I feel I listen to myself. I feel like you have one life. Enjoy it and do it the way you want to and do things how you want them at the speed you want to.
Snap, snap, snaps to that. Before we get right, before we get into, so I want to go into our cafecito and chisme segment in
Okay.
a little bit and talk more about Sire Design, about Netflix, how that came about. But
Okay.
before I get there, I want to ask you a personal question
Yeah.
because I love the Latino power couple. O sea, I want to know the love story. ¿Cómo se conocieron? Like, how did y'all meet? I want to hear all the
Of
little. I'm gonna be
course.
like with my cafecito. I'm ready to hear it.
So Ray and I, obviously, you guys know Ray has his company and I have mine. That is exactly how we met. We met through a mutual friend, which happens to be our wallpaper vendor. And he invited me to an Art Basel event. He invited him to an Art Basel event. He would always talk to me about him, vice versa. Our stories just never aligned. I was in a relationship, for a while. He was in a relationship for a while. Eventually, we were both single, and I walked into the party. He was the first person I saw. He looked at me back, and the whole night we just kept on glancing until there wasn't that many people. And eventually, Christian was like, "Hey, do you know Eilyn and vice versa?" And pretty much the rest is history. That day we met, and we were inseparable ever since. Literally, we saw
It's
each other
so
almost every
cute.
single day for like 6 months, nonstop. Until we're like, okay, so like, are we dating? Are we like doing this? Yeah.
Wow, you guys are so just like so cute. I feel like I'm watching mom and dad on screen. Like,
Oh,
oh,
thank you.
míralos.
I love him. He's the love of my life. He's the love of my life.
Oh, and that gives us hope for all the Latinas hopefully listening. You can find your man's.
Yes.
It doesn't matter when it happens. You will find that person that
When
you
you're not
just.
looking and then you don't expect it, it's when it appears. And you'll know. You know that saying where we're like, oh my God, you're gonna know when like no, for real, as cliche as it sounds, it's true. You just know when you have found the person. You'll know.
I love that. Follow your gut. So I want to transition into
Okay.
our cafecito and chisme because I want to hear about how Sire Design and Netflix found each other. Like, what's that like coming together love story? Because I'm just so happy that they put this show on Netflix because it's probably one of the best reality shows that they put on there.
Oh,
Te
you're
estoy
so
hablando
amazing. Thank
honestamente,
you.
not because you're
Oh,
here. Like, honestly, I've been obsessed with designing Miami. I've been telling everybody to watch it.
You guys are so amazing. No, I mean, the outpour of love that we've received has really been fantastic. But yeah, how Netflix came about was I had done some stuff before in TV in the past. I had done some segments, stuff like live TV. I never really thought like anything would come of it. And, one day out of the blue, an executive producer that I had worked with in the past called me, and I'm like, why is he calling me? Whatever. I answered. He's like, what have you been up to? And I was like, hey, it's been a few years. He's like, I see everything that you're working on Instagram, like you got married. He thought we worked together. He's like, oh, so you and your husband have a company? I was like, no, actually, he has his company and I have mine. He's like, wait, so you guys are married but you're competitors? I was like, yeah, technically. Long story short, they flew down from LA. They filmed a pilot, and that pilot got, pitched out, and we received three offers. And ultimately, we ended up going with Netflix, and Designing Miami was born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is someone that you worked with?
Yeah. So it was an executive producer that I had worked with in the past for other pilots and other things we had done. And we had just
Oh,
stayed in
got it.
contact. And who knew later
Wow.
on he would just call and then he's like, hey, listen, I would love to get on a Zoom with you guys. And I'll never forget that morning. Ray was like rushing because he had to like leave and do something at the, I don't even remember what it was, something at the office. And I was like, hey, babe, do you want to do the Zoom with me for like a possible like show collaboration? I was like, if you're busy, it's okay. And he looked at me, he's like, okay, fine. He was about to like walk outside the door and just be like, oh no, just do it on your own, no worries. And it stayed. And long story short, months later, we were Zooming with Netflix, we were Zooming with everybody, and we found out that Netflix had bought the show.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did your team say? Like I want to know their reactions when you're like, "Hey, we're going to be on Netflix."
I mean, so for a while, there was a lot of negotiations back and forth. We had already signed with the production company and a lot of this. We knew there was an offer. We just had to like finalize negotiations before we knew what that offer was. And I remember I was in my office, and this is in my previous office, and they were all inside waiting in the kitchen area. We had like this like hangout kitchen area space that we worked out of. And I'm that person that like when I'm on the phone and I'm nervous, I have to like walk. So we had like this
Yeah.
courtyard. So I was outside walking, and when I remember at the beginning of the conversations, they had said, you can be in any network for your first season. What network would you want? I was like, well, if I'm going to have one season, it's like I would want it to be Netflix. So when we get the call that day, the executive producer's like, I think I made your dream come true. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, your show is getting a whole season, 8 episodes on Netflix. And I remember screaming at the top of my lungs outside where people thought something was wrong with me. And the girls were in the window like, because they already knew that it was like Netflix. I mean, it was such an exciting. I have videos and photos of that moment. It was such an exciting moment for us because as a Latina, I'm sure you understand. You see situations and you see things, and as a young Latina woman, the amount of struggles, hurdles, and preconceived notions that come into who we are as people from the moment we're born are in place for the rest of our lives. So situations like
Mm.
this you think don't happen to you. You don't think this happens to you. You don't think you can achieve these things. So when our first shot at creating a show, we're able to land it in a platform so big like Netflix. And with the gear of creating a show that's not catty, that's not drama based, that's so positive, was really like, I mean, till the day the show didn't come out, I still didn't believe it. I was like, this is insane. How is it possible? Because you think things like this don't happen to you. So to be able to like have that and say like, wow, we did it off the bat. Our first shot, our season one is on Netflix, feels really, really good.
Is there a season 2?
I can't tell. I can't kiss and tell. That's okay. So
I
there's
was like, pray. I was like, let me see if she'll say the cheese man here.
So, okay, what can I say? There's a lot in the works. That's all I'm going to say. There's a lot in the works. Like, it's not going to be the last
Ooh.
you hear from us. There's
Okay.
a lot in the works, and now having this opportunity, now having this growth and having this and it being so successful. And we want to continue doing things with the right heart, do it with the right intention, and align ourselves with what we feel is best for our future and best to tell our story in the most authentic way. So there's a lot in the works, is what I'm going to say. That's
And girl, I
it.
cannot emphasize enough for you and for the people who are listening that this show really represents the authenticity of Latinos. Like just hearing the Spanish on TV and hearing the bilingual, like it's just such a feels like I'm home with my community. And I
Yeah.
know, I mean, I see on your Instagram how many people feel the same way. Like you are really just making an impact and showing what Latinos can do. And it doesn't matter where you come from. I think of
Hmm.
Valentina all the time and like her immigration story and
Yeah.
that part of the episode where she talks about what she had to go through and how you gave her that
Hmm.
opportunity. Like this is what Latinidad is all about and this is what we do. We
1000%.
build community, we build space. And so
And it's great to it's
shout
great
out to you.
and it's great to see people like yourself on TV and people that you can connect, because most of the time, at least for myself, if I really look back and I say, like, you think of people on TV, you think of people who are on like this platform, you see them so far away from you, you see them so different than what your perspective and reality is, until
Yeah.
you see people like Becky G, that are people like you and I, like, that created something out of nowhere. To see that feels authentic, that feels real, and that's what we wanted people to feel. And that's what I still want people to feel. And that's why when somebody reaches out or messages me, I respond back. I say thank you. I interact, because I don't. That's not something I take for granted. I want them to see I'm human just like they are. I'm a person just like they are. It's just happens to be that I was given this platform to be able to showcase it. But anybody can do that if they do it with the right heart and work really hard.
And that's one thing I loved about just first of all you responding to my DM in general. I was like, "¿Qué? Me respondió." But also just like your platform, because I think you don't like people do feel so far away on TV and people don't
Mhm.
always look like you. Like I'm a proud Hondureña. You don't see a lot
Mhm.
of Hondureños on TV. You don't see a lot of like Latinos that are, I mean, at least for me, I grew up in a very dominant like Mexican
Yeah.
culture and I craved seeing more people like me. And that's exactly why I
Mhm.
built this platform to show what Latinidad looks like, because we don't all look the same, have the same skin tones, we don't all come from the same places. Like there's beauty in our diversity and our stories and who we
Mhm.
are. And I wanted to show people that. I'm like, Latinidad does not look like how you see on TV. Like we can be loud, we can be quiet, we can be this. Like somos humanos. Like
It's
we're
so
human
diverse.
beings.
It's so diverse. And
So
it's what
diverse.
I always say. Real is beautiful. However that may be. Real is beautiful. Whether you're from Mexico or you're from Honduras, whether you're from Cuba, Puerto Rico, wherever, being authentic and being yourself and being real is what makes the world so beautiful, versus trying to showcase or create an image of what we should look like. No, this is a truth. We can be as bougie as we want one day and as chill as we want the other day, because that's the truth
Mm-hmm.
of real life. And one of the things we wanted to showcase the most is authenticity, real life, real storylines, real conversations, real moments, real, snappy moments where I'm insoportable and I snap already. That happens. Real is a beautiful thing because it's relatable. And being
Yeah.
relatable and connecting with people on not on a surface level, but on a deep level is what we need to do more of. And I think that can ultimately change the way life is.
Speaking of relatable, Eilyn, I want to give you, first of all, I want to check in on you. Like, ¿cómo estás with all these conversation about los niños? Because I think every Latina has heard en la mesa, y los niños, y cuando te vas a casar. I mean, I got that all
Yeah.
holiday season. Y vos cuando te vas a casar, y vos esto, y vos esto. Like, the
But
whole
like I'm
dinner.
married to
Like,
the hustle.
right. I'm like, con mi negocio, like, this is where it's
Yeah.
at. Pero no,
Mhm.
dígame, like, how did you, first of all, how are you?
I'm doing
Second,
great.
good, good. But second, how do you handle those moments with grace? Because I think being a first generation Latina, and this is not to like say, oh, pobre nosotras, but I think we have a very different experience because
Mhm.
we are hustlers, we are building our own business. My mom was the same way. She was a single mom and she was like, tenía todos sus negocios, but I feel like, I don't know, this generation of like women, of Latina women, we got a lot to think about. We're building our
Mhm.
business and we're scaling our business, pero también there's this pressure culturally of like
Mhm.
when you're gonna get married, when you're gonna have kids, and esto y lo otro. So
Mhm.
how do you like handle that with grace? Because you handled it with grace on the show. I was like,
Thank you. I
dang,
tried.
she's so good about that. I'm like, I would be all emotional, like déjame en paz. Like, how did you handle that?
I think there's two parts to the question, because you have, like you mentioned, generationally what our families used to and what they thought they were dealt a certain set of cards, and we're dealt a
Yeah.
different. The our generation is very different than our parents and our grandparents' generation. The work that they had to do to make it is very different than the work we have to do to make it. We're very fortunate to have so much more things in our hands
Yeah.
that allow us to be honest, I think people who don't make it, it's either because they don't work as hard, or really it's not in them to be able to want to create something of themselves, because the cards that we have are dealt, they had it much harder. But I think
Yeah.
also that old world tradition and that old mentality is something hard to take away from somebody that has thought that way for so long. So understanding that it comes from a place of love and a place of that is their culture, that is what they believe, that is what they grew up on understanding. It's like us trying to teach them social media, you know what I mean? Understanding that it comes from a place of love, and really just being honest of what you think. If you're not ready, say I'm not ready. You don't know the amount of outpour of messages of girls and women that reached out saying thank you, because I am in that situation. I don't know how to address it. And all I can say is be honest from the get go, from the moment that, the conversation first came up. I was like, guys, it's not happening until I'm not here, 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 here. Sorry. What's the worst that can happen? They're not going to like your answer. It's your life. It's an important decision that you should make for yourself, and you should never feel pressured to do it if you even want to do it in the first place. We lived in a society for a very long time where women weren't considered whole until they weren't mothers, until they didn't have children. That is not who we are today. That it's very different. And I think also in understanding that they come from a place of love, but also explaining and making them understand your perspective and why you do things and why you're creating something and you're breaking the chain that they were, taught to have, is really, really
Yeah.
important.
Well, thank you for showing that on TV and
Of
for
course.
inspiring all Latinas everywhere to address that and have those conversations. Sometimes could be really hard to
It could be
address and
hard,
to
of
talk about.
course. And listen, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, there's times where I was like, oh my God, the same conversation again. And it was more than anything like more on the aspect of Ray and I, because when we would have our conversations, we would have ours, but then in a way where he was like in a joking manner, saying like, when I said, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm going to desert an island, and that aspect sometimes is because you don't want the family to feel that, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to, and it's just you. It's a very private conversation, and I've always been very private when it comes to like my relationships and my life, and I feel like, like they saying, la ropa sucia se lava en casa, and those are conversations that I had internally, and the reasons why are personal, something that I don't have to share with anybody else. If I want to, I can. So, when you're in situations like that, you almost feel like you have to defend the fact that of why you're not doing it. And what I wanted to showcase more was that it is okay to not even have the conversation in the first place. It is okay not to even want them just yet. It is okay to decide, hey, I'm not ready. I don't want to have them, or I don't want to talk. It's okay to do that. It is okay to make
Yeah.
people understand that that is a very private conversation, and normalize the fact that women can be considered whole without having to birth children. They can buy dogs. They can get dogs or
Snaps that.
cats or birds
¿Verdad?
or lizards or whatever they want, or
Or
none,
lizards. Oh my
or
God.
none. Or maybe they just want to travel the world and be on their own. Power to you, sister. Do whatever you
That
want.
part. All of it. All of it.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you, and it's about Sire Design.
Okay.
If you could redo anything when it comes to your business, Netflix, anything in life, what would you redo and why?
Oh my God, all the mistakes I made. Oh, absolutely. All the mistakes I made. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. If I could redo, I can't say I would redo anything, because everything I've done has led me to where I am today, and everything I'm doing today is going to lead me to tomorrow. There's
Yeah.
no perfect path. It's whatever the path is that allows you to fulfill your dreams and your goals. So I would just take it the way it is. And I think that's the reason why I'm so scared to go to a fortune teller, because I'm scared that she's going to alter what I think of like the future. I feel like everything that you
I could
go
never
through,
either. I
yeah,
get you.
right. I'm like, what if she tells me that I'm meant to like do this, and I like alter the way I don't know, a Virgo, like perfectionist psycho over
Virgo.
here. I wouldn't change anything. I think everything happens for a reason. Everything teaches you something. The good, the bad, the mistakes, all of it is a growing experience. So it doesn't kill you, makes you stronger, like they say. So I wouldn't change anything. Maybe a few of the makeup looks on the show, but whatever. That's just being vain.
What? Your makeup look, girl, it looked on point. It looked on point each time. I was like, she does not look this fabulous every day. There's no
Oh,
way.
thank you. Thank you. No, I don't. I promise. I don't.
I, first of all, I'm just so grateful to you to be here
No,
and
I'm
for
grateful
sharing
for
your
you for
story and
having
for
me, of
sharing.
course.
Thank you. Thank you. Latinas, we do it better. We do
Forever.
it con un little sansoncito. Corazón y el alma. Like, I thank you for putting your story out on Netflix and for the world to see what Latino excellence looks like.